Hello, lovely people, and welcome to Unpacking Possibility. I'm your host, Tracy Stein. As some of you know, I'm a psychologist and an educator, and I'm known for creating a whole bunch of things like audio programs and other materials to help people live a more abundant and happy life that feels more in line with the people that they really are and truly want to be. So today I wanted to talk about something that some of you will think is too out there, but I'm going to ask you to hang in there anyway. And I'm going to also bring up things that some of you will think maybe aren't out there enough. Or you'll say, why is a psychologist talking about this? And actually what I'm going to talk about is manifesting. It's a term that's been used a whole lot, and I want to shed some light on it from a perspective that is neither entirely new agey and where you just kind of think of something and it happens to you, and nor is it purely all, linear and mundane and so forth. Now, you may be able to hear my dog Zelda barking upstairs because I am sitting outside. Now Cosmo's chiming in, he's howling. So we've got a bunch of rescue dogs, and they are all wonderful and lovable, but really ill-behaved. So I may have to somehow move, but let's see how it goes. But anyway, I also have the privilege of manifesting working outside today, and I feel great about that. If we're going to look at a silver lining in terms of the whole idea of social distancing and pandemic-related changes, many of them have been really stressful for a bunch of us, most people, I know. But I'm looking on the bright side and saying that today I am sitting on my back patio with flip-flops on in casual clothes that are a step above sweatpants, and I'm getting to talk about something that I think is really useful and that I enjoy talking about. So, right, looking on the bright side. But anyway, about manifesting. I think it's one of these things that people, again, have strong opinions about. People think either you cut out a bunch of images from magazines and put them on a vision board, and then poof, you're going to just manifest the life you want. And you know what? Who knows? Maybe in some instances that's how it happens. And again, at the other end of the spectrum, you have people who believe none of this is possible. You just do the best you can do, and that's it. But there's no such thing as energy or spirituality or attracting things to yourself. And I don't think I fall firmly in either camp. I've had so many instances in my own life where I have manifested things that everybody said were not possible, and where I truly felt like I was in the flow of life and creation and all of that. I don't think that we always get what we want, and that doesn't mean we're not manifesting our own kind of path in some way. But anyway, first thing is to talk about what I mean by manifesting. So I think of manifesting as this marriage between the mystical, right, energy and spirituality, and this idea of this intelligent and benevolent consciousness and universe that connects all of us. And in some ways does respond to our thoughts and desires and intentions. And then the mundane part is the doing the work and learning what we need to make good decisions and so forth. And I like that for a variety of reasons. Of course, as a psychologist, I think it's really important that we get really clear on what we want anyway, and that we be willing to take steps to make good things happen, right? So that's kind of the mundane part of it. But even if I were thinking about this from a purely spiritual and esoteric and kind of magical perspective, it would be so important to get clear on what we want. Now, often we have more than one kind of set of desires or beliefs going on for us at any given time, right? And that's going to sound like, well, that doesn't make any sense to some people, right? But if you think about it, how many times have you thought, I would be so happy if only XYZ thing happened? And then sure enough, that thing happens, and then you become anxious or conflicted or unable to make a decision to embrace that thing that you've thought that you wanted for so long. Now that can be in terms of a partner, that could be in terms of a job, that could be in terms of a home, that can be in terms of so many things. And what it is that we can be of more than one mind. We can unconsciously or somewhat subconsciously, just below the level of everyday awareness, we could be having a thought that, let's say, this good thing has to do with financial abundance. And what if we feel that, if we had financial abundance, if we had a good amount of money or had nice things, it would mean that we were overly materialistic and therefore not a great person, right? So the problem is if consciously you're applying for jobs that pay you a good salary and unconsciously you think that money is the root of all evil, and sometimes we don't know that if we have those thoughts. And a lot of people in the helping professions actually have a lot of feelings about, conflicted feelings about accepting payment for doing healing work or doing energy healing or even becoming a therapist or becoming some other professional helper, right? We can think that those two things are at odds. And if that's the case, even if it's something we're not fully aware of, we will avoid things that pay us well. We will avoid, holding on to money or managing it well or being thoughtful about it and so forth. So that's just one example of how that mundane part of our lives, our thoughts and our beliefs about what things are good and not and what we deserve or not, can get in the way of us even accepting the things that we bring about, whether, again, that's by a completely mundane way where you've applied for 20 jobs and you've gotten 3 offers, yay, or where out of the blue somebody comes along and offers you some terrific opportunity, right? But you have to be open to receiving that good thing. So doing our own work on ourselves psychologically and really getting into the nitty-gritty of why things might not be working out or have not worked out for us thus far, understanding that actually is a way of opening the door to greater possibility. Let's see. I also think that, there's this myth out there. Another kind of myth about manifesting is that life is predestined. Now, do I think that some people have kind of a destiny that looks pretty obvious because, it just seems when you look at their biography on TV or you read the book of their life, like you look at Steve Jobs' life and you just see how this person who was super smart and super driven, but also a difficult personality, wound up becoming a person who is not only successful, but changed the way we all do so many things in our daily life, right? Just the technological advances and his own ideas about success and innovation really changed life for so many of us, for most people. So do I think that somebody like that could be kind of predestined for some sort of greatness? Absolutely. But do I think that if somebody like that puts no effort in or rejects possibility when it presents itself, would that person still be as successful? No, I don't. So again, this marriage between mundane and mystical, it's kind of like when you meet somebody and maybe that person winds up being your partner, your spouse or your life partner, and you feel drawn to them and you feel this sense of familiarity and connection that you have not felt with somebody else. Could that be that your souls were meant to find each other? Absolutely. Could you manifest bringing that kind of connection into your life by your own intention and focus and willingness? Absolutely. And might that happen by a chance meeting? Of course. And yet, if you stay home all of the time, the likelihood that you will meet that person who's the right person for you diminishes. I don't think the universe hands us too many things that require no participation on our part. So there's a plane flying overhead, and I'm not sure if you can hear that because I have on a lavalier mic, which is one of the greatest inventions ever for any sort of podcasting or other voiceover work. in noisy environments, but hopefully that'll pass soon and you'll just hear hopefully birds, or just, or perhaps not even that. But yeah, I think that there is some sort of intelligence to the universe. I think that there are some things that we tune into as things that would be things that would make us happy, that would be a good fit for us. I think when we are clear on that, we notice opportunities as they present themselves. We're more attuned to the cues all around us. Again, not only spiritual types of cues like having a dream or an intuition that something great is going to happen and then it does, but also by, just having a clear sense of what it would look like to manifest something meaningful to us. So do I think that life, or that there are things that are predestined? Possibly. But it's interesting. Some people know that I do intuitive work, and I've done, not professionally, but I've done a lot of study over the years, and I've met a lot of terrific intuitives and from various disciplines. And among them are many people who are remote viewers. And remote viewing, for those of you who don't know, is a type of psychic work that actually our own military did. They were funded for about 20 years, and more of the ex-military people who did this work are much more overt about, they're more able to talk about it now, and many of them offer trainings. It's a more systematic type of intuitive work, a more highly structured work, but it can be very accurate. But there are lots of people, including lots of physicists like Marty Rosenblatt, who founded the Applied Precognition Project, and has done a ton of remote viewing, and but also talking about how we can manifest things. And I remember hearing a talk he gave not that long ago about manifesting. He didn't use that word so much, but kind of drawing to us or making into reality a future that is more in line with the best things we want for ourselves. I'm paraphrasing. And again, Marty's a physicist, and he talks about this much more eloquently than I can. He can talk about the physics of this and how this might all work. But what I thought was so interesting about Marty's talk is that he's talked about manifesting even things like the healthiest version of you. And when Marty talks about the future, he doesn't talk about a definite path, right? Because, if you think about it again, to go back to the mundane way of looking at it, we always have choice, and we make zillions of choices every single day, ones we think about and ones we're less aware of, and they're just unconscious things. We reach for that box of cereal versus something else. We choose to call somebody or we don't. We choose to stay in or leave a relationship. We choose to go, get something checked out when something doesn't feel right in our bodies, and so forth. All of those choices take the many possibilities, right, and make some of them more probable. So that's a very mundane way of looking at it, right? If I choose one route to work today versus the other, it might change my commuting time by 20 minutes, more or less, because the route I happened to choose had less traffic or had more, and so forth. But Marty talks about, using visualization and guided imagery and what I would say are, self-hypnotic techniques to shift our energy to connect to that future self, that possible future where we are healthy and, feel good, that healthiest version of ourselves. Now, I realize I'm treading into tricky territory because I think sometimes, we become ill. I've worked actually primarily with medically ill people in my life. So what I'm not saying is that we are these omnipotent beings and we can choose whether or not we become ill, and anyone who's ill has chosen that. That is not at all what I'm saying, but I'm just saying this because he was talking about the idea of health. And look, even if we have a medical condition, there's variability day to day. So imagine if we envisioned very clearly and very consistently the best possible outcome for us, given everything. And what Marty is saying is that you make that possible future more probable. It's like, imagine there are these threads attached to us and then attached out in a fan in front of us. And at the end of each thread is another possible outcome. And it's like, as we move our intention and our focus and our meditative practice on one specific possibility, it's almost like drawing it that much closer. It's just an interesting way of thinking about things. And even if we take Marty's example and we set that aside and we just think about something like, finding a job or finding a partner, the clearer we are about what we want and the clearer we're allowing ourselves to focus on something, the more likely it is that not only our energy aligns with that outcome, and the idea is that sending some sort of connection, some sort of message out to the universe saying, this is what I am ready to receive. But it's also this kind of, on the mundane side, it's taking steps to do things to bring a particular opportunity closer and select it from among the other choices when it presents. And I would say the same thing applies again to finding a partner. If you are in a relationship, you have not only chosen that relationship, you have chosen every moment to stay in it the entire time you're in it. If you choose to leave, that is making a different choice. Not choosing something is a choice. So these are how I see manifesting as being both this marriage, again, of very everyday, linear, non-woo stuff and the more kind of spiritual, esoteric stuff. So I'm sure most people have had experiences where they have had something happen that they have wanted so badly, and somehow all of the people will say, the stars aligned and these things came together, and they thought, man, I can't even believe this happened. I never even thought that was possible. Start paying attention to that and start keeping a journal of not only when that happens, but of the things that you're really focusing your energy on. Because we all know how easy it is when things are stressful to really focus our energy on and imagine in an incredibly vivid way the worst possible scenario. And of course, if we are anxious or feeling depressed, that's even more likely. But pay attention to that. So here are a few examples of times when I think the universe was kind of listening. And, I felt very fortunate to have some great things come about. And so years ago, my husband and I were looking for a home. And we were looking at Hoboken, New Jersey, which for people who know the area, it's a suburb of Manhattan. It's right across the river from Manhattan. Super exciting, but super expensive place to live. Hoboken is also not an inexpensive place to live. And we desperately wanted more space. Our one-bedroom apartment was really feeling too small, especially with pets. And we had been doing more manifesting work. This is probably like 25 years ago. And we had been writing down again and again all of the things we wanted to manifest in our next home. And, it's so easy to say, oh, well, that's not possible, or we're never going to get it for this price, or we're never going to, that doesn't even exist. And this is just one example of many times when we found something that, experienced realtors said, you're never going to get this, it's not out there. So we wrote down on our list that we wanted a double door entry, which sounds kind of funny, but in Hoboken you have a lot of brick row houses and, brownstones that have double door entries. There's a, little mini flight of steps up to this kind of stately double-door entry. We wanted at least 3 bedrooms and 2 bathrooms. We wanted to be within 5 blocks of the Hudson River. We wanted to have a yard for our dogs. We wanted to have parking, which, forget it. At the time we were looking, that this list was nearly impossible because we also wanted to get it, I think, for, under $400,000, which, we were pretty much describing a single family home, at least in our minds, and we wanted it to be brick or brownstone. And nothing like that existed in that price range. So anyway, we wound up in contract for more than that on a tiny brick row house that needed a ton of work. And at the last minute, it was an elderly couple. They just said, we don't want to sell, we don't want to move. And we had legal options to try and force a sale, and we just didn't want to. We didn't want to be those people, just the energy of moving forward with, buying somebody's house when they don't want to sell it, especially an elderly couple. We were like, forget it. But we'd already sold our apartment and we're scheduled to close. We were incredibly stressed. And we kept doing these manifesting exercises and just kind of writing it down and sending it out to the universe. And the final statement that I always encourage people to use when they try to manifest something or want to manifest something is just add at the end that you ask that it be done for this, its equivalent, or better. And that's what we said. And it's so hard to let it go and just say, all right, I'm trusting in the universe. I'm doing the best I can. We're going to keep looking at places and working with realtors, but, this doesn't seem possible. And so, sure enough, we found through somebody we know, he had bought a condo, which is not what we thought we wanted. It was the ground floor of an apartment building, also not something we thought we wanted. It had been a commercial space. And he'd bought it and was going to renovate it and flip it and decided not to. And I think we bought it for like $300,000, which again, at the time in that area was impossible. It had plenty of space to make three bedrooms, which we did. It had 2 bathrooms. And in fact, when we went to look at it, it actually had a men's room and a women's room. So that's even funnier. And it was in a brick apartment building that eventually the first floor was brown-stoned. It had a parking lot in back, totally unheard of because it had been a U.S. post office at one point, it had been a grocery store at another point, and it had been a real estate office. And so we were able to buy this place that, with the men's and women's room and all this other weird stuff about it, and renovate it. It was within 5 blocks of the Hudson River. It had parking, obviously, and we were able to change that backyard, that parking area, to make it a backyard for our dogs as well, so that they could run around out there. And with the double-door entryway, the funny thing is that it had a front door, a single door, and it also had a door at the back by the parking area. Because it was the whole first floor of this, relatively small but decent-sized apartment building, and so the universe also kind of has a sense of humor. Now, had we said, "Well, I pictured a brownstone or I pictured a brick row house, and even though this checks all our boxes, forget it," would we have found something else that was even more similar to what we had pictured in our minds? Maybe. But I really believe we manifested that. There's not a soul who would have said that was possible then. And years later, we did this with other places we lived. And, I think, though, the thing is, it's not that we wrote our lists and sat home. And it's not that we said no to, the 101st thing that we saw. So, again, this blend of mundane and mystical. I think the last thing I want to add in there about manifesting is that gratitude is incredibly important, not only for things when you get them, but for all of the things we've received, right? I am so grateful for the many opportunities that I have had, social, educational, professional, personal, spiritual. And the energy of gratitude is so healing for us. And I think it opens us up to believing in and receiving abundance. And it also makes it easier for us to do all the things we need to do to keep good things kind of coming our way, but also to notice them, right? Because if we're in a mindset that is really pessimistic or ungrateful, it's hard to see the good in the things that do present themselves. So that's that. Again, for some people, you might think, again, manifesting seems like an odd topic to bring up on a podcast hosted by a psychologist. But again, I think that we are manifesting things every single day of our lives. And whether you think about this as, the universe kind of bestowing something, wonderful upon us, or us just carving a path out for ourselves, it really doesn't matter. But what I would say is, I hope this was helpful and somewhat interesting, and I hope it helps you to keep unpacking your own possibility. So until next time, I wish you a wonderful week and all good things. And if you like the podcast, please like it, share it, subscribe. And if you're interested in any of my audio programs, especially the one on manifesting during deep sleep, where you can get a good night's sleep and also take in positive suggestions for manifesting, you can find that through my publisher, healthjourneys.com, or wherever you stream the rest of your audio content. All right, be well.